Greetings! This is the Stinky Cheese Man, and today I'm bringing you another Dune Spice Wars video. As of the making of this video, Dune Spice Wars is on patch 2.0.5, and today I thought we could talk about some of the more complicated mechanics that are involved with the uses of this game's most sought after resource, spice. After all, it's in the name of the game, right? I'm going to assume for this video that you already know the basics of how to harvest spice, such as by building refineries. This video is instead going to focus on some of the more complex mechanics related to spice, namely spice taxes, exchange rates, and the Choam market. For newer players, spice might seem to be just another resource that gives you money and helps your economy as you fight for control of Arrakis. And while that is true, spice can help you make oodles of money. It is also tightly integrated into a number of other mechanics. After watching this video, I hope you'll gain a more profound understanding of why harvesting spice is so important, as well as how you can use the various mechanics built around spice in order to help you win the game. First off, let's talk about spice taxes. Every faction in the game has the basic mechanic of the spice tax, where every 25 days, starting from the beginning of the game, a certain amount of spice will be automatically subtracted from your stockpile in order to pay for your spice tax. Some factions have different names for this mechanic, such as for the Fremen, it's a bribe for the Spacing Guild. But, functionally, every faction operates in a similar manner. You can adjust the amount of spice that's added to your stockpile from your spice production using this slider here. The amount stockpiled can range from 0% all the way to 100% in increments of 10%. Any spice that is not being stockpiled is instead directly sold to the Choam for a certain amount of Solari, which is then added to your daily income. Every time you successfully stockpile enough spice every 25 days, the amount will be subtracted from your stockpile and you'll receive a few bonuses. First off, whenever you successfully pay your spice tax, you'll receive 1,000 hegemony. You'll also gain 1 stack of each faction-specific tax bonus. For Atreides, Harkonnen, Ikaz, and Vernius, you gain a small boost to your spice exchange rate for every spice tax that you successfully pay, up to a maximum of 5 bonuses. Other factions gain different bonuses depending on which faction they are. For example, the Fremen gain an increase to their authority production. House Carino gains an increase to their Solari production. And the Smugglers gain an increase to their influence production. Some factions also gain additional bonuses whenever they successfully pay their spice tax. For example, the Smugglers gain additional Landsrat standing whenever they pay their spice tax. And House Atreides gains additional bonuses to their spice production on their fully crewed harvesters whenever they pay their spice tax. Well, all these bonuses sound great for whenever you're able to successfully pay your spice tax. But what happens if you don't stockpile enough spice instead, and you're unable to meet your spice tax quotas? Well, first off, any spice that you did have stockpiled will still be emptied from your stockpile anyway. Secondly, you miss out on that juicy 1,000 hegemony that you normally receive whenever you meet your spice quotas. On top of all this, instead of gaining a bonus specific to your faction, you gain a new penalty that not only hurts you in the long run when it comes to your spice exchange rate, will also remove any bonuses that you had stacked up from previously fulfilling your spice quotas. And if you're a faction that has Landsrad standing, you end up losing Landsrad standing whenever you fail to meet your spice quotas. Now, you're probably wondering how spice taxes are calculated. From what I can tell, there are a few major factors that determine how much spice you need to pay in each spice tax quota period. First off, spice tax quotas have a relatively small amount added to them each tax period, regardless of if you paid the spice tax or not. In this example, on normal spice contract settings, my first spice tax required 80 spice. However, in the next spice tax period, that went up to 96. Secondly, spice tax quotas also increase or decrease in a manner relative to your spice production. The more total spice that you produce in any given tax period, the higher your next spice tax quota will be. Conversely, if you produce less spice in a given tax period, the following tax quota will also go down. While I don't know the exact number on what percentage of your production gets used for calculating the next quota, the magic number seems to be around 30%. So if you're not in the habit of micromanaging how much spice you stockpile, you can probably safely keep the slider on about 40% stockpile and still be able to pay all your spice quotas, assuming there are no interruptions to your spice production. Additionally, it appears that one-time sources of spice, such as discoveries, do not have any notable impact on how spice tax quotas are calculated. So feel free to grab any one-time sources of spice, such as black market discoveries, without fear of increasing your spice tax. Although spice quotas tend to trend upwards over the course of the game, especially as you obtain more spice fields and have more spice harvesters active, keep in mind that there is a ceiling to how much you actually pay in taxes. Under normal settings, the maximum amount of spice that you'll ever have to pay in a 25-day spice tax period is 2,500 spice. So, feel free to just keep harvesting more and more spice, as past this point, you don't have to worry about increasing your quotas. Now that we've finished talking about spice taxes, let's talk about exchange rates. Your spice exchange rate is, simply put, however much money you get for every spice that you sell on the open market. For every spice you produce that's not going to your stockpile, you get a certain amount of Solari from the Choam market, which is directly added into your Solari income. Simple, right? Well, sort of. You actually have two different exchange rates that we need to talk about. First off, you have your base exchange rate. The base exchange rate is a semi-random number that usually hovers around 2 Solari for every spice that you sell to the Choam market. I say semi-random because it'll usually be a fixed number at the beginning of each game. However, after every spice tax period, this number will fluctuate between as low as 1.5 Solari and possibly all the way up to 2.5 Solari. Now, that's your base exchange rate. What about your actual exchange rate? Your exchange rate that you actually get Solari for is whatever your base exchange rate is, plus whatever bonuses or penalties that you've accrued over the course of the game. For example, if you hover over here, you can see what positive or negative modifiers are affecting your exchange rate. As mentioned earlier, you can increase or decrease your effective spice exchange rate through a number of means. Penalties to your exchange rate can be acquired in several ways, including failure to pay your spice taxes, or applying the traitor debuff by betraying another faction or launching a nuke. Sometimes, resolutions will also pop up in Landsrad councils that will negatively affect your spice exchange rate. Bonuses to your spice exchange rate can also be gained through a number of ways. For example, meeting your spice tax quotas, if you're Atreides, Harkonnen, Ekaz, or House Vernius. You can also increase your spice exchange rate by having a large number of Choam shares, so long as you also have the Choam support economic development researched. In addition to all this, you can also gain a bonus to your spice exchange rate by constructing the Choam branch main base building, so long as you meet the basic criteria of having a base exchange rate of at least 2.2. One cool aspect about the exchange rate mechanic is that you can actually forecast the next tax period's exchange rate. One of the spice-related economic developments allows you to see what the exchange rate will be after the next spice tax period. If you have this development researched, you can see what the exchange rate will be for the next tax period under the section marked Base Exchange Rate Previsions. This can allow you to decide whether or not you want to stockpile more spice or sell more spice on the Choam market to prepare for future spice tax periods. If you see that the base exchange rate is going to rise or fall, you can adjust however much spice you're stockpiling in order to maximize your Solari income. Alright, we've talked about all this boring stuff like spice taxes and exchange rates and forecasts. Now, let's talk about something fun. Let's talk about the Choam market. The Choam market. The most complicated and convoluted part of this game. Or is it? At first glance, the Choam market seems to be this big ball of incomprehensible, wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. But in actuality, the Choam market follows a few very simple rules. Before we go into those, however, let's talk about what the Choam market actually does. The Choam market is a simple buy and sell mechanic that is kind of disguised as a weird stock or futures market. After the first month, the Choam market opens for business and is unlocked and available for every player. There are a certain number of shares available that you can buy or sell at any given point in the game. And the more shares you currently produce, the more bonuses you can gain over the course of the game. And if you're able to buy enough shares, you can actually trigger the economic victory and outright win the game. As was mentioned previously, if you have the Choam support economic development researched, you can gain a better exchange rate for every increment of 5% Choam shares that you currently own. Or, in Carino's case, possessing Choam shares can make your army more powerful, as well as help you in counter-espionage. Possessing more Choam shares also grants you extra influence production, and a higher influence cap. You can also gain the ability to recruit mercenary units, and you can also gain a generic power boost to all of your military units, regardless of what faction you are. Some Landsred resolutions also give you benefits for having or selling shares. And don't forget, if you own the majority of shares at 50%, you can outright win the game. All these bonuses sound great, but how do we actually get shares? Well, the simple answer is you click one of these buttons over here. While there are some events and Landsred resolutions that will grant you Choam shares, the most reliable way to gain Choam shares is to simply buy them. Whenever you buy Choam shares, you'll gain an increment of 20 or 5 Choam shares in exchange for a certain amount of Solari at whatever the given purchasing price is. Once you do so, those Choam shares will be immediately added to your shareholder stockpile and help you to gain any additional boosts that the Choam market provides. Selling Choam shares is pretty similar. Instead of pressing the buy buttons, you simply press the sell buttons, so long as you have sufficient Choam shares in your shareholder stockpile. Now, over the course of the game, it may be a little difficult to keep this Choam market menu open at all times, especially if you're doing combat or trying to vote on Landsred resolutions. So, If you ever feel lazy or just have too many things to deal with, you can also press these buttons here that will enable a toggle for automatically selling or buying Choam shares, provided you have the Solari stored or the Choam shares available to complete those transactions. Note that there is a relatively short amount of time after each transaction where you cannot buy or sell Choam shares. So if you're busy handling other things in the game, don't forget you can switch this toggle on in order to buy or sell shares automatically. Under the shares distribution part of the Choam market screen, you can not only see any bonuses you've acquired as well as however many shares you've purchased, but you can also potentially see however many shares opponents may have at any given time, as well as however many shares are currently owned by the House's miner. This can help you keep track of what other bonuses other players may have achieved through the Choam market, as well as any potential rivals when it comes to triggering the economic victory. You can also see how Choam share prices have trended over a certain number of days using the price history graph located within the Choam market screen. You can adjust the length of time shown using this drop-down menu. This can help you keep track of how Choam share prices have changed over the course of the game. In addition to this graph, the Choam market button up here also may display an upwards or downwards arrow if any drastic changes in Choam share prices have been made recently. The price of Choam shares is determined by several factors. First off, buying shares will cause a sharp increase in share prices for a relatively short amount of time, and repeatedly buying shares will cause an even steeper increase to the Choam share value. Selling Choam shares follows the same basic idea, where selling Choam shares over a relatively short amount of time will cause a sharp decline in the price of Choam shares. One important tip I have when it comes to purchasing and selling shares on the Choam market is, whenever possible, purchase or sell shares in quantities of 20 rather than in quantities of 5, so long as you can afford it. The reasons being is that not only is there a brief period after each transaction where you are unable to purchase or sell shares, whenever you purchase or sell shares, the purchasing price and selling prices are adjusted immediately. So, whenever you purchase 20 shares, you will gain those 20 shares at the current purchasing price. However, if you were to purchase in quantities of 5 shares instead, not only will the first transaction delay the second purchasing of shares, you will see that the purchasing price will keep going up and up as you purchase more shares, causing you to lose more Solari when purchasing. Or conversely, when selling shares, the selling price will drop down, meaning you'll gain less profit whenever you sell your shares. Generally speaking, as more and more shares are owned by players and fewer shares are left outstanding and available for purchase, share prices will go up. At the beginning of the game, there will be plenty of available shares, as players tend not to have a lot of Solari, and they also generally don't start with very many shares in the Choam market to begin with. However, over the course of the game, as more and more Choam shares are purchased, you will see these purchase and selling prices go up drastically. Yet another factor in the price of Choam shares is the amount of spice currently being sold on the Choam market. Right now, the price of shares is hovering right about 104 Solari for purchasing price and 82 Solari for sale. We haven't purchased any Choam shares or sold any for quite some time, so the price has more or less stabilized. However, we've also been selling every single bit of spice that we produce into the Choam market. What happens if we switch this to 100% stockpile, or potentially lose some of our harvesters? Now take a look. It's only been just over a week since we stopped selling spice on the Choam market, and the share price has dropped significantly. As less and less spice is sold to the Choam market, whether it be by you or by other players, the share price gets driven down further and makes shares cheaper to buy. Some Landsred resolutions, Landsred standing, and even some developments can also apply significant discounts or premiums to the cost of Choam shares. For example, the Choam support development makes buying Choam shares much cheaper, and the insider trading development increases the Choam share selling price, making selling shares more profitable. In addition to developments, increasing your Landsred tier also can give significant discounts to the Choam share buying price. However, if your Landsred standing drops below 200, you begin to suffer some major penalties to the price of buying Choam shares. And if you drop below 100 Landsred standing and end up in the pariah tier, you may find that the price of Choam shares can become astronomical extremely quickly. One question you may have is, how do more shares get added to the market? Well, after every Spice tax period following the Choam market's opening, new shares will be added to the market. This usually causes a sharp decline in the current price of Choam shares and makes Choam shares more affordable for a short time. Although your shares will be somewhat less valuable due to the new influx of shares, this also means that shares will be cheaper and can be a ripe opportunity for increasing your percentage of Choam share ownership. In addition to Spice taxes preventing a sharp influx of new shares after every Spice tax period, as the purchasing price and selling price of Choam shares increase due to the purchasing of shares by players, more shares will become available due to the house's miner selling shares, making them available on the open market, thus allowing you the opportunity to purchase more shares and reach these 10, 30, and 50% benchmarks. I know I've thrown a lot of information at you about how Spice taxes, the exchange rates, and how the Choam market operate. It can feel kind of overwhelming to new players, so I'm going to boil it all down to a few important tips and guidelines to follow until you have a more firm grasp of how spice harvesting and all the different spice-related mechanics work. First off, make sure to stockpile enough spice in order to pay your spice quotas. Although some more advanced strategies can work in setting your stockpile to 0, that's not something I would normally recommend to new players, as there are more advanced strategies that call for very specific builds. If you don't feel like micromanaging your stockpile and spice trades, I recommend setting your stockpile at 40% and maybe even 50%. This is generally a safe bet, and as long as your spice production isn't interrupted, you should be able to pay all of your spice taxes. However, once you do feel comfortable enough with managing your spice stockpile slider, try to stockpile more spice when the exchange rate is low, and sell more spice when the exchange rate is high. When it comes to Choam shares, make sure to buy them early and often, and get them while they're cheap. Whenever you have a lot of spare Solari laying around, feel free to buy a few shares here and there, assuming that you also have a substantial income to back it up. Over the course of the game, you will see that Choam shares tend to get more expensive as players buy up more and more of the available shares, and even after applying all the discounts you can potentially get, such as increased Landsred standing or the Choam support development, you may find that Choam shares become astronomically expensive compared to the beginning of the game. This concludes my video on the Choam market, as well as some of the more complicated mechanics around Spice, such as taxes and exchange rates. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you've learned a few things that will help you in your battle for control of Arrakis.